Have I got something for you today? No, not down there. I have got an awesome story, but more importantly, an awesome piece to share with you guys. Not only is this piece phenomenal, but the story is crazy. Welcome to the Extreme Channel. My name is Mr. X, and today we are reviewing this custom 1/3 scale Curse of Spawn statue. Crazy story about this piece we're going to talk about, but before we do, we are actually giving away 2 Venom statues right here. If you want to know how to win these, make sure you like this video and stay tuned towards the end. Also, at the Ides of every single month, we are giving away extrizes. Those are extreme prizes. We send gift baskets to 2 people on the 15th of every month. To enter that, all you have to do is comment on any video. The more videos you comment on, the more chances you have to win. Now we're going to dive into this piece. First of all, this is an extremely rare piece right now. It'll still be rare in probably about 6 months or so, but not as rare. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, as I said, this is a custom. What a custom piece is, it is an unlicensed private commission, usually numbering less than 100 pieces made. This particular piece was commissioned by a group that wasn't really well known and didn't have a lot of history, if any. However, like many, I saw the piece and it was one of the most amazing things in the world. Even though I'm not a huge fan of Spawn or even know a lot about the Curse of Spawn, I wanted to get in on it. And the commissioner said, hey, we're going to do an early bird special. Anyone who's willing to pay in full, then I will reserve you one right away and you'll get a couple $100s off. I'm always hesitant to do that when it comes to somebody I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with my money. I don't know if the piece is going to look as good as the renders. And lately, a lot of people are kind of worried because there's rumors here and there of a custom group taking people's money. And if you've ever watched the channel before, you know I buy tons of customs. That is the rarity that happens. However, there was no updates on the progress of this, and I paid via PayPal via goods and services. PayPal has a 6-month protection plan, where if that person does not deliver the product in 6 months, then you get your money back. And anytime I'm dealing with somebody I do not know, I always pay goods and services. If it's a project that's pre-ordered and takes longer than 6 months to complete, at the 6-month mark, if I have any funny feeling, I ask the person doing the project to refund my money, and then I repay and I pay the extra goods and services fee. So I lose a little bit of money, but it's insurance. Well, with no updates on this piece in almost 6 months, very few, I started reaching out asking for updates, and I was not getting any response, and I had a horrible feeling. So 1 week before my 6 months was up, I contested this piece, and I asked PayPal for all my money back. They did not get a response from the seller, so I ended up getting my money back. Unfortunately, not everybody was in the same boat as me. A few people were. There weren't a lot of people that paid for everything up front. However, quite a few people put a deposit amount down. They didn't pay for the whole thing, but they put a deposit amount down. And as expected, the commissioner of the group eventually disappeared and ghosted everybody. Very, very unfortunate. After all that went down, out of the blue, someone I'm not familiar with came up and said, hey, they're taking over the project. They purchased the digital sculpt. They've purchased the 3 or 4 production pieces that were made. They've purchased the prototype. They have them in hands and they are going to take over production. Now I was a little wary of this and I reached out to them and let them know my situation. They wanted to confirm with me that I had indeed paid for it and I had indeed been refunded. And they reached back out to me. Apparently they'd heard of the Extreme channel and they said, hey, if you want to rebuy one at full price, we can get it to you because we plan to relaunch this. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. So I ended up repaying for everything, and again, very cautious about it. However, their communication was top notch, almost instant replies, kept me updated. This actually arrived 5 days before it was supposed to, and here he is in his full glory. And one more thing before we get started. So I've been communicating a lot with them and giving them my feedback that I'm going to give you guys. And as you know, everything is raw here. We tell it exactly like it is. But they have decided to take care of those people that got shafted. Apparently, they have certain check and balances that they're going to do with those people's PayPals if they're willing. And they will honor some of those prices that the other person ran off with their money. That is incredibly cool. So that tells me there's a lot of trust with this company. Very excited, and they told me they have future projects in the works too. I don't know what they are, but really looking forward to those. So with that being said, let's dive into this review of this 1/3 scale Curse of Spawn piece. We're going to use the extreme scale. The extreme scale is a 1 through 5 scale. On the far left, T is a 1, that's trash. 5 is extreme or the absolute best under an X. And as a disclaimer, as I said, I don't know much about the Curse of Spawn. However, rumor has it that another YouTuber whose channel is almost as big as mine, who has tons of comic knowledge, will be reviewing this in the upcoming weeks as well, and he may be able to fill you in on the Curse of Spawn. But first thing we want to talk about is concept on this piece. And because I'm unfamiliar with the Curse of Spawn, some of the concept I'm just using is, does it look cool? So let's check it out. So starting at the base here, fabulous base. You have a lot of different things going on. First of all, it appears as he has just killed Violator, which is a common enemy to Spawn. And not only is Violator dead, but you only see his head, and there's tons of green blood everywhere on this rocky base with stalagmites coming out of the back. And the Curse of Spawn, which from my understanding is a mutated version of him, all these bones coming out of him, kind of like an exoskeleton, very Skeletor-like, which somebody said his portrait actually looks like that, but more badass. These spikes coming out almost reminds me of a Doomsday transformation. He is sitting on top with his leg on top of Violator's head, very victorious, showing off his power, his muscle. His fingers are these extremely sharp bone blades. He has these jutted out bones coming from everywhere from his body that are part of his armor that just look kind of badass, like he had that transformation. And he has a couple different head portraits we're going to look at in design. Both are awesome. One is more of a battle masthead, the other one is an open mouth, and I love both of them. And not only do I love both of them, but it actually comes, as you see on the far side over here, with a separate bust display. And not only does it have a bust display, but as you see, it has the classic Spawn cape with it. So we'll look closer at that with design and then Payton Sculpt. You know, people seem to be raving about this piece, and not a lot of people have a lot of information on the Curse of Spawn. And I think one of the reasons they're raving is because it is so cool looking. It has that wow factor, whether you are familiar with the character or not. You see, it's a badass piece. It's incredibly done. And honestly, I'm going to give the concept an X. And I'm using that on the basis of the fact that I just think it is so cool and I love the way it looks without even getting in close to the details, which we will get into in a minute. However, before we do that, let's talk about the design. Design is about displayability, shipping. Does everything fit well together? Are there switch outs? So let's start with the switch outs. I'm going to give you some close-ups here and you'll see more later. But here's a close-up of the battle masked version of him. Kind of the bone has come over his face as a mask that he can fight with. Or here is the open mouth version with his awesome teeth. Some really cool design stuff we'll look at closer in a bit. Then here's what it looks like on the bust display. Those are the only switch outs it came with, but I think that's all it needs. I think the pose, as I talked about in concept, is perfect. This did come in about 30 different pieces, which was crazy, and obviously there was no directions and no reference, so it took me a while to figure out some of them because a lot of them are these little bone parts that are secured via key and magnet, and they're just kind of all over. However, each of them the key is designed to fit in a very specific space, so it didn't take me that long. I don't want to show you guys the packaging and shipping for two reasons. I didn't take pictures of it, and two, this was kind of one of the test pieces, so it may not be what it's going to be in the future. However, everything was packed extremely well. I had 0 breakages, which is kind of a shock, to be honest with you. This base is very light. I think part of it's hollow, but there's a decent weight overall as he's a huge character. I mean, this is 1/3 scale, meaning the real life version is 3 times bigger. So let me try and get the dimensions for you guys. The widest part, which is hard to tell if it's these huge spikes up here or if it's the base, but I'll do the base, is right a little over 21, 22 inches. The tallest part is right under 30 inches. And then deep, I'm going to say he's about 18, 19 inches. However, again, those spikes on the back jut out a little bit farther. So it's a massive size, and I couldn't find how tall the Curse of Spawn is, but I found out how tall Spawn is, and the scale is accurate. Regarding assembly, as I said, everything went in via key and magnet, and everything went in really smooth. Some of the magnets are extremely strong. And one of the things I really like is, for how many seam lines there should be, there really aren't. It's very difficult. There was a slight seam line, I think, on the back of the piece where you can't even see unless you're displaying him from the back, which I don't know why you do that, but some people might like that ass. And it's just interesting. So like even some of the pieces, like Violator's horn right here, total separate piece, kind of hard to even tell. So design-wise, one other very interesting part, not only was it all those pieces, but his legs and his crotch are a separate piece, and his torso. So it's rare that the crotch is a separate piece, though I have seen that on about half a dozen statues before, but it secures so well via magnets, and I assume for shipping purposes it probably helps with eliminating breakages. One final thing on design, when I got this, I saw the green incandescent blood on the base, and I thought this was glow-in-the-dark blood. I was so excited, I made sure to have powerful light shine on it, and then I turned everything out black. Sadly, that wasn't the case. However, I reached out to the studio and I let them know that, and they said they're going to try and do that with the upcoming pieces they're going to reproduce. So design-wise, honestly, I don't know what I would change here. You can easily see that this is becoming one of my top favorite pieces in my collection. I think if I had to choose something, I wouldn't want it in as many pieces, but if that would raise the risk of breakages during shipping, I wouldn't want that either. So I think this was the right way to go. But design-wise, there's not much. I guess to find some critique on the design is I like really symmetrical figures. That's just who I am, that's how I like. But, for example, his shoulder blades, on one side the bones are going towards the back, and the other side they're coming towards the front. And that's the design of the character. As I said, the keyholes are very specific, so I actually know I have them in right. That would really be my only critique. Same thing with his feet. On his left foot he has one going down, his right foot is one going up. But apparently he was designed that way. But overall, I'm having trouble finding something, so I think the design is an X. You can quickly see this is becoming one of my favorite statues. It's definitely top 5 right now. Now we're going to dive into Payton Sculpt, and I did have a few recommendations that I made to the commission group that they are going to use for the production of the future pieces. Let's look at the bust first, and first thing I'm going to look on this is the cape. The cape is awesome, not only on the front and back, but they did a couple different things here. First of all, they used some great texture. It's this tiny texture detail throughout, and that's mostly on the back of the cape, the part that's showing, because you have an interesting thing going on the inside of the cape we'll look at in a second. But they did a great job with the shadowing of the black on the red here, and I like the vibrant red, very Spawn-like. There's no mistake on that. But let's look at the inside of the cape. This looks crazy. This almost looks like a creature. It looks like some scales and this patternized, I don't even know what you call it, but I like the fact it's different. It's kind of creature-esque like, very reptilian. And some of what we're seeing on this bust display, we will see on the character himself, but just like the bust display, he has this exterior bone cartilage, or this armor of bones on the outside that not only are bones, but very sharp. There's actually on his shoulder blades, creatures with fangs and horns coming out of them, which is a little bit different than the actual torso. I love that they switched it up. I guess one recommendation, it'd be cool if this could be the torso as well, but definitely cool how you can display both. I love his skin. So here you just see some black. We're going to see some red on the main one, but there's almost like these muscle striations you're going to see throughout his entire body, very Spawn-like. And starting with the base, first thing I want to look at here is the rocks. And this was my biggest recommendation. I think the paint job is very basic here. Not on the bloody parts, but on the stalagmites coming up and essentially the back of the statue that you don't really see much, but I think there could have been more variation in the paint. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the green color they plastered onto the brown. Maybe some more grays in here because it's more of a rock-like structure, and maybe a different color of green. That was some issues there, not where the paint's placed, but just some of the colors they used. However, when you jump into the part where the base is bloody, this looks much better, and I don't know if it's the highlighted green blood effect or the clear resin moist effect they added on top of it. Maybe it's a combination of both, but that's really the only difference, but it really makes it pop. Looks like the blood is running from Violator. I'm a big fan of this, but as you look at it, you're like, man, that'll be really cool if that'll light up. So I'm pretty sure they're gonna do that. They're seeing if it's feasible right now. Let's look at Violator. There's so many cool things going on him alone. First of all, look at his skin. You can see again the blood all over it, the neon green blood, but his scales look fantastic. This looks like real animal skin, whether it's a mix between a reptile or a hard-skinned animal. Very, very cool. So much detail in here, not only on the paint, but the sculpt. You kind of see what would assumably be an exterior spine of bones going down the bottom, which is cool. Looks good. It doesn't look as good as the bone on Curse of Spawn. However, look at where he is smashed in his head. This looks delightfully disgusting. I don't know how it could have worded it, but you see some redness. You see this weird yellow and orange color, almost like some of his guts or brain is smashing out. This is so cool. Check out his horn here. His horn's really well done. Looks like a real horn. Maybe a recommendation, a little bit more gray on this, but then it might not contrast the head of Violator as well as it does now. But it looks really good. Looks real. Let's look at his eyes. He has these honeycomb eyes, and the color on here really pops. They have this really dark red they have nowhere else in the statue. They've added some yellow, which is nowhere else in the statue. And it has this glistening effect. Very, very cool, but not as cool as the inside of Violator's mouth. This is phenomenal. It's one of the best creature-like inside of mouths I've ever seen. You can see the pinks and reds mixing in with some of the a little bit darker green blood coming out of there, as well as this huge glistening effect to simulate saliva, this moist effect. His top teeth here, he has all these jagged, small, tiny teeth on the top going in 50 different directions. They look like real teeth. Looks like enamel. And the same can be said about his bottom teeth that are broken off. I like the length of these, how they vary, how some of them are broken. Some of this detail is just impeccable how they added this. Check out his tongue. His tongue looks like a real tongue. Reminds me of like a Freddy Krueger movie of some type. It's a different pink and red flesh tone than everything else, and they really added that clear resin effect all over that. And one thing I really like about this piece is it stays true to the concept. Blood is where it should be. It shows the strength of the Curse of Spawn. Violator's a deadly enemy, I do know that. And even the blood is where it's supposed to be, including on Curse of Spawn himself. Let's look at his feet. Crazy, weird looking feet. As I said, a lot of his body has that black striation we're going to look at in a second with these armor-plated bones on the exterior, and there's so much detail sculpted into these, not only going in different directions and spikes jutting out, but you can see some of the blood of Violator on here, and it's not a lot. Let's look at more of his bone, and then we'll look at that black body part in a second. But as you go throughout the entire statue, looking at where the different bones are jutting out, like I said, a lot of them have some wear in them. They use some different color, just really varying it up, but it almost looks like a calculated mess of madness. It looks so good, but if you really study it in detail, it looks like it's all over the place because certain places there's cracks, certain places there's not. And again, I think that holds true to the story. Let's look at his skin, and this is crazy. Other than the middle of his torso, on his body, he continues to have that black muscle striation that we talked about on the bust, but look at this. There's these deep red grooves that really mix the statue up and make it even cooler. I'm a big fan of these. And as I said, everywhere I think except his kneecaps and the middle part of his torso, you have these. Here's the middle part of his torso, awesome six-pack. We haven't really talked about the musculature of this piece, but because part of it's hard to judge with all these bones on the sides, but you can definitely see it. Check out the sides of his torso here. You can see the red striations in there. Then some other cool bone pieces. Check out what I would assume is almost a belt buckle. You have two things going on here. First, you have a cool little skull. And then right below that, his nut cup actually has almost a crucifix on there, which is, who knows what that means, but I like it. And if you're wondering what his ass looks like, since we talked about it earlier, man, try sitting down with this thing. But what's really cool about all this bone stuff, it looks like real bone. It looks like something you'd find or something that an ancient culture would use to carve stuff in. Now I want to show a different color of spikes he has on his outer thighs and then also on his forearms. Check these out. I love that they did this. I think it would be too much bone spikes. So these have kind of a small moist effect on them too, so they glisten a little bit, all moving in the same direction. Very, very cool. And as I said, here's some on the outer thighs. And then let's start looking at his arms. Same exact thing. And this adds to that symmetry that I love. It's the same on each side, despite his arms and legs being in different positions. See, on his arms, you also have more of that red indentation on the striations where his bicep is. Now this is really hard.
That's what she said!
But I'm trying to get some pictures of his hands here. His hands, believe it or not, some of my favorite parts. Just how his nails look is unbelievable. And at the end of this video, as always, there will be close-up video with music, and there's a really good shot of them there, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And these also have some of Violator's blood on them. Take a look at his shoulder blades, or shoulder pads. These are where the bones are jutting out. On the right side, they're going towards the front. The left side, they're going towards the rear. And they're different sizes and shapes. The paint job on this is impeccable, as well as the sculpt. I think the sculpt's even better than the paint job. Take a look at the huge bones coming out of the back. And technically these are optional, so if you have a space requirement, you could remove them. There are still keyholes where they go in, but it's on the back of the piece. But they also added a little bit of transparent effect on this as well. So this shines a little bit more than any of the other bones, any of the other white bones. And I like that. Check out his battle masthead. Originally, I thought this would be my favorite, and I still really like it. It's very similar to his other portrait, with a few differences. But the bones are essentially covering every part of his face other than his head. And his head has those same striations, but they're more tightly knit together and they don't protrude as much. Take a look at a shot up close here. He has these designs etched into the bones, which looks really cool. And here it's very symmetrical. Close shot of his eyes, and his eyes look very similar on each one. I love the color they used. Be awesome if this was neon paint that lit up as well. So much cool detail, I don't even have words. And let's look at what, surprisingly, is my favorite portrait. A lot of the same stuff going on with the head, but the bone structure is a little bit different, especially on the sides of the eyes. And you can actually see nostrils. And check out the teeth, very, very cool. Maybe a little bit different color on the teeth, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about that, it may not be. Maybe it was right to go with that same color, especially how his battle mask assumably is a transformation mask. And then check out his tongue on the inside. I think they did a great job. You can only see part of it. I don't know if I was able to get any good shots here, but there's some good texture on it. Again, that moist effect inside of a mouth, not as strong as it was on Violator. So Payton Sculpt. First, I think the opportunities with paint, while there weren't many, I think the back of the piece, which really isn't that important, is definitely an opportunity. I'm trying to think of what else. If they had used neon paint, that would have been better. I'm going to give the paint a W. It's a 4 out of 5. For factory paint, it's extremely good. Sculpt on this guy, I would have liked to see a little bit more texture in some of the rocky bottom, but you're not looking at, if you look at Violator and if you look at Spawn, I think the sculpt's an X as well. It's perfect. The intricate detail that is in some of these bones, not to mention just the badassery of the fingers and the protrusions and Violator's head and the head sculpt. So usually on new pieces, this is where we rate value. Now this is where it's difficult because I paid the original retail from the original group because that was the cost that was put. However, from my understanding, they said that the price will actually be cheaper than that. They don't have an exact price, but they will announce that when they are ready. So we won't rate value. However, as an overall statue, one of the best rated ones I've ever got, he's an X. This is an X statue, especially if you consider there's currently only a handful of them. However, there will be more coming soon. So really excited to have this piece, really excited to have one of the first ones, really excited to win races. And here's some close-up detailed video for you guys before we close everything out. So that's it, guys. Remember to leave your comment below to make sure you're entered into that monthly drawing. And then also check out some of my other custom pieces or subscribe to the channel. But until next time, take care.